Welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Katie Englert, who is president of Compass Counseling. Compass Counseling was started in 2013. She is a licensed professional clinical supervisor, a board-certified telemental health counselor, and a level two Gottman trained therapist. She works with therapists across the country and loves sharing the message of mental wellness. Her most recent accomplishment was being named Entrepreneur of the Year. Today, Katie will be sharing simple ways to cope during COVID-19. Let's welcome our guest, Katie. We're glad you're here today.
Thank you, Bobby, for having me. I know that this is a whole new world of setting things up online and and getting everything offered, and it's just kind of a tricky time, and it's a new thing that we have going on. And I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I know that we have a lot of people on our team who are huge friends and supporters of the library, and I think it's super cool that you're offering these webinars to people on all kinds of different topics. It's just a great way to stay connected. So I appreciate you for having me today. So whenever Bobby reached out to me, I've been trying to share information in the community about what different ways to cope. We are resilient people, but it's in my lifetime, something like this has not happened to everyone at the same time, where you see children, adults, people who are working, people who are not working, businesses, large and small, houses of worship, like everyone is experiencing this major change and difference in how we operate and do our daily life. So when people started to ask me about things that we can do, how do we get through this? I thought it was really important just for me to write down some things that I would share with anyone, and that's what I want to share with you today. I've put together 5 ways to cope during COVID-19, and I want to share those here with you today. Is this an interactive webinar, Bobby, or is it pretty much it is interactive? Okay. So if you have any questions about what I'm saying or would like for me to elaborate, to the best of my ability, I'm going to do that. This is not, I would like to just start by saying, if you have a personal question, there's other better ways to reach out to me or to anyone, that just call our office, or you can call whoever it is that you work with on an individual basis. But the first thing that I'm going to talk about today is taking care of yourself. I know that sounds very basic right now, but self-care is a hot word. It's been a hot word for a long time, but basically I think we've just gotten so busy that we put ourselves on the back burner. I know this is really important for women. It's important for everyone, but I feel like women tend to have looser boundaries about their self-care than men typically do. That's not a hard and fast rule. But it's essential to take care of your spiritual health, getting enough sleep, your physical health, staying hydrated. You also want to make sure that you're eating well during this time. So those are things that are really important when you're taking care of yourself all the time, but especially when you're under a new kind of stress, or there's things that are going on that are impacting different levels of your life. So self-care is the first topic that I want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about here is to stick to the facts. So I know whenever something this huge happens to our culture and our communities, we're getting worldwide information, we're getting national information, we're getting, state information, we're getting county information and city information. All those things are important. But it's very emotional when you're getting hit with a lot of information and your life has changed, your routines have changed. So for us, we need to be careful not to only get wrapped up in how this feels, because it is very emotional. And typically when we work with people, um, we help them figure out how thinking, feeling, and acting work together to help make sure that you are, you know, that you're a healthy person, and that you're meeting your goals in your life. When things like this happen, it can be easy to let the feeling part of that three-piece equation take over. And we really just want to make sure that we're sticking to the facts. So that's number two. So we really just want to stick to the facts. Um, and what that might mean is, so what is your family required to do today? What are you as an individual required to do today? Not everything that we're doing is an absolute must. So we need to make sure that we're sticking to those things that are essential. We need to know what our budget is. Actually, how much money is in our bank account, or do I have? And how much do I need to be spending realistically to stay within that budget right now? And those are just some essential things that that we need to stick to the facts, so we don't let our emotions make those decisions about our family, how we're going to spend our time, and how we're going to spend our money. So those are some important things. Number three, that will overarch into lots of different areas. So number three is checking your thoughts. As I said in number two, it's really easy to get emotional during times like this. And I think we're all going to have our moments, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we need to be checking our thought patterns. We need to be taking some time to stop when we find ourselves having unhealthy thoughts, or when we are worrying about things that are out of our control. So we want to instead spend our time thinking about, as much as we can, about those things that we can control. And those things might be how we spend our time, who we connect with, how we spend our money, those types of things. So we want to also, whenever we're thinking about things that are in our control and things that are out of our control, a lot of times if we find ourselves spiraling into, some people call it going down a rabbit hole. So they will chase a thought. So they will chase a negative thought, okay, and it'll spiral down and out of control. You can also spiral up. So those are good things to know about how your brain works. So if you can switch that thought pattern, it can help you have a good day or a bad day. And you do have a choice in your thoughts. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's actually very hard. But you do have a choice when it comes to the things that you're going to set your mind on. It is tricky, and some people need help with that. That's not uncommon. But for people who tend to chase down the holes, who think one negative thought, then that leads to another one, and then that might lead to another negative thought, try to adopt a mindset instead of, saying, I'm never going to have a negative thought. That's a little bit unrealistic. So it may be better serving to you to say things to yourself like, that's a worry that I have, and calling it out, just saying, that's a worry I have. It's a real worry. But it's not here right now. And so we're just going to cross that bridge when we get there. And to have those things about the things that are out of our control. So to try to set some things in place, some boundaries for yourself is good. The fourth thing that I want to talk about today. So we've talked about, number one, take care of yourself. Number two, stick to the facts. Number three, check your thoughts. And number four is to laugh. There's not very much to laugh about right now as a community and as a culture. And, things seem to be a little bit tense. But one way that we can really cope well, and that's not just right now, this is all the time, is to make sure that you're having some type of humor or laughter in your life. And I don't mean the kind of humor or laughter that is at someone else's expense here. I just mean whatever your favorite flavor. What makes you laugh? If that's people, if that's reading funny things or watching funny videos, or looking at old pictures, or watching your cat. Our cats have been jumping around in our front yard in the evening, and I think it's funny. So any of those little things that are pleasures or make you laugh, make sure that you're having some space for that. I would encourage you to have that daily. If you have a funny friend, connect with them. A lot of people are doing these live video chats. That's another way that you can connect with people who usually seem to make you laugh or can lift your spirit. So to do that more often, I think is important. But whatever way that you get laughter in or humor in, try to aim to get some of that in every day. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about, or the fifth point, and then we can have conversation if we'd like, is to stay connected. So whether that is family, friends, faith community, neighborhoods, therapists, whoever you typically connect with, and are in a fellowship with in your life, you want to stay connected as much as possible. So um, whatever way is safe with the social distancing, whether that's calling, writing notes, doing these live video chats, stay connected with people, and reach out. I've noticed in my community that I have checked, me personally, I've checked on my neighbors more during this time than I typically do. And I think that that is important. And I think that that's something about this that I hope we take forward and that we learn through this is, we shouldn't ever be too busy to check on our neighbor, or reach out to people who maybe you're not great friends with, but that you had an acquaintance maybe that who may be prone to being alone or to isolate. Those are good people to connect with and reach out to. And even if it's just a quick text or something like that, that makes people feel good and connected whenever people reach out. And if you are a person who has, been working with a counselor in any way, shape, or form, I would encourage you, if this is overwhelming to you, wherever they're at, to reach out to them, because a lot of mental health professionals are working remotely through telehealth. And I would reach out to whoever it is that you typically work with on a regular basis, because they are likely still meeting with people who wish to do that through telehealth options. So I would make sure that you connect with that as well. And part of staying connected is to just remember that this is not permanent. This is an extreme circumstance, but it is also a temporary circumstance. So just to stay connected to those people, because it can help you kind of process through it and break down some of those things onto a more personal level. So I hope that these 5 tips of taking care of yourself, sticking to the facts, checking your thoughts, laughing, and staying connected have been helpful. And I would like to open up now if there are anything that I could elaborate on or share with more. I'm happy to do that right now. Okay, so one of the questions that we're getting is about, it boils down to routine. And I think a lot of people are experiencing this right now. We are not waking up at the same time. We're not leaving the house at the same time. We're not going to bed at the same time. And that is something that I think all ages are having a hard time with. So we've heard the messaging coming from top down to be, try to stay on a routine, try to stick to a schedule. Those things are ideal, but unlikely for most people during something like this, because this is not our typical the way we operate, and our bodies really get used to those rhythms that are our everyday. You hear people say, "Oh, I'll wake up at the same time every day," even if they don't set an alarm clock. So right now, if you're doing that and you don't have to be anywhere, it's kind of throwing us off. We might be staying up later than we typically do just because we don't have to be anywhere in the morning. So that's going to throw our whole sleep cycle off. So if we can keep the sleep and wake as consistent as possible, that's huge, because the actual daily routine is going to be different for everyone. I know for my kids, that's been something that whenever we stick to what our regular bedtime and wake up times are, we have better days. So that's something that and I know this, so I know a lot of mamas know that about, if you have a set bedtime and a set wake up time, it's it's a lot easier on everybody emotionally and just physically. But I think for us to take that advice too, as just adults, to try to keep that as normal as possible for us, whatever you typically do. Another thing that has been thrown off track, that someone has mentioned, would be how our eating habits have changed. And this is a big one. Uh, whatever your preferred way to eat is, I know that we're eating out culture. So that's changed for a lot of people. We can't go into a restaurant right now. We can't, there are some things we can't do, but we can still have some regularity and rhythm and control over what we're eating. I think a lot of people, especially in times like this, eating can be a comfort, and it's something that we know that if you eat certain foods, that it releases different chemicals in your brain. And so, whether you're hungry or not, and a lot of people will call that emotional eating. Um, and I'm not an expert on emotional eating, but it is a coping skill for a lot of people that, well, we'll just eat. And I've heard some of my friends refer to this as the quarantine 15, so that they're trying to avoid the quarantine 15 with eating, either foods that make you feel safe or comfortable. And if that's something that you're doing, it's important there's a couple of things you can do. Don't buy the things that are trigger for you. And I know that that's tricky right now because it's comforting. But to just not even bring them in the house, because self-control can go out the window whenever your emotions are up and down and unpredictable. So that's one tip. The second tip would be to write things down and what your goals are. So if your goal is to, you know, have one dessert a week or a day or whatever your goal is, to write it down, and have some accountability. So either have some friends or your spouse, or kids are really good accountability people. You tell your kiddos if you have them, or just somebody who you talk with a lot. Just say, hey, this is something that I've struggled with since this happened, and I need some accountability here. And I think that is for lots of different things, and not just eating. I think anything that we're doing in excess that isn't healthy for us, now is a hard time, because I think a lot of people coped in the past with, getting out of their home and doing something. And not a lot of people have mastered staying at home all the time and not being able to leave for their coping. So I think, pulling in some accountability is always helpful. It's something that I have to structure in my own life. And I think that, if we're honest with ourselves, it's something that most of us probably need in a lot of different areas. So to set that up, but to also and that's where that self-care piece comes in, to find ways that you can cope that feel self-soothing to you, that are healthy, that are not going to get you off track in whatever your goals are. Is that helpful? Okay, good. So what we do at Compass, one of our strong messages that we share is that we all have mental health. And if I'm around and talking to a group of people that I know really well, I might say this. I might say, we all have mental health. How's yours? I typically don't say that in public settings, but I'm going to today because it feels pretty small here. So I think for us, at Compass or wherever, if you're a mental health person, we see mental health as just a piece of the whole. We see your physical health, your spiritual health. I was talking to other people this morning, your financial health. There's a lot of different components that go into a whole person, and mental health is part of that. And in the healthcare world, you will hear people say mental health is the best deal in healthcare. And that is because if your mental health is well, and then it can bleed into the other pieces of your whole health. So if you are taking care of your mental health and your mental wellness, then you may be more likely to be healthy in your routines, choose other healthy behaviors, take care of your physical health, take care of your spiritual and financial health. So there are a lot of components that if your mental health is intact, it makes some of those other things kind of fall into place a little easier. It doesn't fix everything, but it is, when we're talking about mental health and mental wellness, we're just talking about these things that we talked about earlier. And that is having healthy personal boundaries. And it also includes um, being able to recognize when your thought patterns are, are healthy or not healthy. And that might be when you're worrying about things that are out of your control, whenever you are exaggerating things. So there are several different types of ways that are not healthy to thinking patterns that are negative. And that's something that you would have to work one-on-one with someone to talk a little bit more about. But when we're talking about mental wellness in general, we're talking about having healthy thoughts, having healthy feelings, and having healthy actions, and they all work together. And so if your thoughts and your actions and your feelings, if one of those are off, it's probably going to throw off the whole balance. So usually you pick a place to start and choose to work a little bit at a time on one of those things, because making long-term habit changes sound simple, and they should be simple, but they're difficult to change a habit. And a lot of people need help and support with that. So that's our goal, is when we work with people. But a lot of people can work on mental wellness without working one-on-one with someone. And that would just be these things that we've talked about today, as far as taking care of yourself, being able to determine your own ideas and opinions about something around the facts, and not just taking other people's opinions all the time. So sticking to those facts, and then using your own brain to decide, how do I, what do I think about this, or how do I feel about this? Those are healthy things that when people are mentally healthy, that they're able to do. They're also able to kind of catch themselves when they get off track. So if you notice yourself getting off track, that's a good thing. So it's a good thing for you to be able to be aware and say, I'm not being healthy about this. I either need to talk to a friend or someone that holds me accountable, or I might need to talk to a professional about this, because this is not healthy for me. And they stay connected. So these are things that when we talk about mental wellness, these are the components to that. So I hope that's helpful. How can we help our children and grandchildren understand and deal with the current situation? This is a really interesting thing that's happening right now. And I think, kids, I think for a second they were really thought of whenever we transitioned the school situation. And then I think we had to get adult affairs in order. And that's just been something that I've seen as a pattern. Um, and so the thing for kiddos is that they went from a very rigid, structured setting, in most cases, if they're public school kids, um, to where they have to, wake up at the same time every day. They have to have breakfast very similarly. They have to follow all these school rules. They go from this class to this class to this class. Their furniture is adapted to them. Their everything about their day is adapted to them, but it's decided for them. It's not a choice. It's not, do you feel like doing this right now? Or, it's time for this. And there is a designated time for each little thing that they do throughout their day. And so I think the amount of change that they've experienced just in that one piece is overwhelming to a lot of kids. They also are extremely in a social setting all the time. And even if they're not extroverted children, even if they are introverted children, they're still around other children all day long, most of the time. And now they're not. And, my little guy has made several comments like, I've only seen 5 people since this has in a long time, mom. Like, and so that is something that is really hard. And I think that they hear more than we think they do, but their interpretation of it may be different than what we think. And I think talking to your kids about what they know and what their thoughts are more important than what we tell them about things necessarily, just to help them process what they already know. So one activity that I'm working on a webinar with a homeschool mom right now. And one activity that she and I were friends, and we've approached this activity a little differently, but she, one of the tips that she talks about is that this is living history. So it's important for our kids and for us to um, capture that for ourselves if we can. And that's going to be very interesting, and it's a good way to process. So for her, what she chose to do is every day they do a 1 page in their journal about this, about what they think about it, what they've learned, how they feel, those types of things. And that's a really great way to do that. I loved the idea so much that I tried it with my own children, and we did it really well for one day. And then after the first day, that's not really our jam, but we really still want to remember that and be able to process through it. So we've been trying different things. We're going to, I did an audio recording of a conversation I had with my kiddos, and it just was like, what do you know about what's happening right now? And to hear what they know is innocent and not what I was worried about that they were worried about. And I think sometimes we have to be very careful that we don't project our own fears about a situation onto our kids, and protect that innocence a little bit if we can. So to hear what they were worried about and what they knew about the situation was very interesting. So I think that that's a good thing to ask your kids. I also asked them what they were worried about, if they had any worries about the situation or the new way that things are going on. And the things that I was concerned that they were worried about weren't even on their radar. So the things that they were worried about were, that they weren't seeing their friends, and that's an obvious one. And there's just some other little ones that they said. But I think just to listen to your kids and ask them questions and listen to what they say is very important. And then ask them if they need your help or if they want you to explain something to them. Because a lot of times when we're talking about working with kiddos, we tell them things that they're not wanting to know yet, or we're projecting our thoughts about what they want to know or how they feel onto them. And, sometimes just asking them the questions and asking them what they need, they'll tell you. So just kind of creating opportunities for that, I feel like is important. Um, if they, so if we're trying to help them deal with it, I think it just depends on the child and asking them, how you can help them or what's happening or, things that you can do. Um, Another thing that we're doing is we're collecting things that are happening around us, and we're going to do a time capsule. So um, I was one of the people who graduated in the year 2000 and from high school, and my class did this, and it's something that made a big impression on me. And we opened it up at, I think, our 15-year reunion. And it was just sweet to look back and see, little things we wrote about and things that we put in. And so I think we have an opportunity to create some memories around this. There's a lot of hard parts to what's happening right now and a lot of things that are out of our control. But one thing that's in our control is like some of the precious or positive things that you do want to remember and take forward when you're looking back on a time like this. Oh, cool. So the library is doing a time capsule. I didn't even know that. Uh, so Leah put in here that she is going to do a program for the library next week about a time capsule. Awesome. I'd love to know more about that so I can share it too. So that's really cool. Okay. So another question that we have that has popped up for me is, when things go back to normal, what are some tips to adjust when we do get back to normal? Um, I do a lot of business coaching. That's part of my role and how I do work with people. And that's been a hot topic of conversation. So I don't know exactly. None of us know how this is going to work out or what it's going to look like. My guess is like how it slowly tapered into the stay at home that we're in now. It'll slowly taper back out. Um, so I think, that's my That's my opinion on how that's going to go. As far as adjustment, the major things about self-care and about being a healthy person are, hydration, sleep, nutrition, spiritual health, and and taking care of your physical body. So I think as much as we can keep those things in place now, and especially with the sleep, I think that that's a tricky thing. I think adjusting back to when people go back to work, if they're unemployed right now or laid off or working from home, will be the childcare piece. So I think that that'll be a tricky piece as far as like how that works out. And I think you're just going to have to take it one day at a time. I think that for me, that's a cross that bridge when you get there moment that I talked about earlier, and because we don't know what it's going to look like, and it is out of our control right now. So I think the things that are in our control are having our sleep schedule and our sleep health really good, um, and just taking care of that mental wellness piece and just being as prepared for it as we possibly can. I don't think that things will return, just as far as culturally and socially, exactly to how they were before. I just don't know that that's possible, because we've all been impacted by what's going on. So I think it's going to impact our behaviors, at work, and just as individuals, and how we choose to operate a little bit. So I think just keeping those main things at the top of your list will be the best way to adjust, and to give yourself a little bit of grace whenever you're, you know, going in and out of these extremes right now that we're experiencing. Oh, yay, the link to the time capsule's been shared. Anyone else? We get asked a lot of questions a lot of the time. We have an ebook that I'll send to Bobby at the library if she would like to share about 10 questions that people might want to ask before they start something like counseling. There's a lot of resources that we just try to put out. So if anybody ever wants to reach out, you can. We have lots of things we share. We have a podcast that the library has shared before too that's free. And we're just, really wanting to serve our community. So if you have any ideas or any specific needs, feel free to reach out.
We want to thank Katie for being here today. Does anyone else have a question before we close? I want to let you all know our next McLib Live will be Monday at 11 o'clock. Our guest will be Brent Hausman, financial advisor. We hope you'll plan to join us for the next McLib Live.
Thank you for having me, Bobby. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you.